On behalf of the team here at errolwilliams.org, welcome and thank you for visiting us. My name is Errol Williams and I am your host. The title of this presentation is Pursuing Excellence in Communication. I repeat, Pursuing Excellence in Communication. Communication is the lifeblood of any organization, whether the organization is private, public, or your own personal home. Communication is as important to your organization as water is to a dying and thirsty man in the desert. If you don't have proper communication taking place in your organization, it could cause you to lose time, money, and a lot of effort. So it is imperative that we learn how to communicate far more effectively. The purpose of this presentation is that we will all become what I call ACE communicators. ACE, ACE communicators, accurate, clear, and effective. Accurate in that the information that we give is the right information all the time. Clear in that the information is not over the head of the person that you're communicating to. You're communicating in their language. They understand you the first time, all the time. Effective in that the information that you transmit, when put into practice, produces result. It is important, therefore, that we all become ACE communicators, accurate, clear, and effective. The question, therefore, must be asked, what is communication? What really is it? You may want to pause this video just for a minute or so and ask yourself the question, what really is communication? Communication is a three-way process of sending, receiving, and giving feedback. I believe that we are all expert in sending and receiving information, but the area that we often falter on is giving effective feedback. If you do not give effective feedback, it is impossible for you to be able to justify that what has been sent is what's been received. If you look in the education system, for an example, we use examination as the feedback process that the pupil has understood what the teacher has taught. So giving good feedback is very, very important. So remember this. Communication is a three-way process: sending, receiving, and giving of feedback. It is my belief that we should spend more time in making sure that we give accurate feedback where necessary. Many times in my management programs that I teach in companies around the world, I always ask them this very important question whenever I teach on communication. I always ask, what are the channels of communication? Normally what I would do is put them into groups, 3 or 4 groups, and I would send them away, give them around 20 minutes or so to address this very important question. Generally speaking, they would come back with between 20 and 30 different channels of communication. And what I like to do is to group them under 3 headings, and that's what I'm going to do right now, is to group all of those different areas that we may identify as the channels of communication. You know, like, for instance, writing letters, sending memos, email, text, like that, and put them under 3 headings. Let me tell you what those 3 headings are. The 3 headings are these: verbal communication, non-verbal communication, which is body language, and written communication. I repeat, verbal communication, non-verbal communication, and written communication. If you can master these 3 channels of communication, then you would have mastered communication. It is very, very important that we identify these 3 areas as being the channels of communication and do our utmost best to learn these 3 areas and to make sure we become proficient in these 3. If you're a leader, you may be able to get away with not being able to write, or you can get others to write for you. But if you're a leader, it is impossible for you to get away from the other 2, verbal communication and non-verbal communication. I just want to share with you 6 key points on each of those areas that I believe will enhance your communication skills and make you more accurate, clear, and effective. Let's begin with verbal communication. Verbal communication, basically, that I want to touch on here is listening skills. You see, we hear with our ears, but we listen with our mind. Listening skills is indeed hard work. Isn't it interesting that we spend more time listening than we do reading and writing? But in our education system, we spend more time on reading and writing and very little time, if at all, on listening skills. I believe we should reverse the process, or indeed balance the process, and spend much, much more time in preschool all the way through and being effective communicators in terms of how we listen. Let me share with you 6 key tips that I believe if you put into practice, it will make you far more effective as a listener in communication. Here are the 6 key points. Point number 1 is to look interested. Look interested. Whenever anyone is communicating with you, always look interested. Show that you're interested in what they are saying to you. Give them the impression by your body language that what they are saying is the most important thing on the planet and that they are, at that moment, the most important person to you. Give them your undivided attention. Don't answer phone, write letters, or continue to watch the television. All those distractions, all those things that you continue to do is an indication to the other person that you're really not interested. So you want to maintain eye contact, not staring, but just maintain eye contact with the person to let them know, I am here with you. I hear what you're saying, and what you're saying is really interested. Point number 2, inquire with questions. Before you begin to give answers to that person, one of the things you want to make sure you do is to ask sufficient questions until you get enough information. In that way, you can actually give a more informed decision. You see, if you go to court where there is a case being heard, the judge will make sure that he listens to both sides of the arguments by making sure the relevant questions are being addressed. Once all the questions are being addressed, the judge will send out the jury, and they're in a better position to make a far more educated decision. So I suggest that you spend time becoming a master of asking the right question. Point number 3, stay on target. Whenever you're listening to someone, don't allow yourself to be manipulated or sidetracked. Don't try to discuss more than one topic at a time. If other things come up while you're discussing this issue, make sure you reserve that until this issue is finished. Don't discuss 2 or 3 things at a time. Oftentimes, managers do and make this mistake in their meetings. They have too many things being discussed at the very same time. So you want to make sure you stay on target. Finish off what you're discussing, then move on to the next point. Point number 4 is to test your understanding. This is powerful because this is the feedback stage. You want to test your understanding of what you have heard. You want to ask questions. You want to actually paraphrase or summarize what the other person has said in your own words. So you may say something like, so what you're saying is, if I understand you correctly, what you have actually said is, and so you can repeat in your own words. This way, you're giving clarification to yourself and to the other person that you have clearly understood what they have said. Very important. The next one is what I call evaluate the whole message. The whole message comes across to you in 3 different ways: by words, by tone of voice, and by body language. When you are listening to somebody, the message that you're getting from the other person is coming across to you in 3 ways: by the words they speak, by the tone of their voice, and also by their body language. If you continue to answer your phone or to do other things like watch TV, you would have missed the tone of their voice, and also you may also miss their body language. Listen to this very carefully, where research and statistics have indeed been done. It shows that when we are communicating with other people, only 7% of what is being understood from the other person is in words. 38% is in the tone of their voice, and 55% is in their body language. Now, try and understand this. 38% is the tone of their voice, and 55% is their body language. Therefore, 93% of what they're saying to you is done subconsciously. And if you miss that, you'd have missed the majority of what they're communicating. So it's imperative that you evaluate the whole message. You see, while we're listening to someone, our mind is capable of 4 times the information that they're giving to you. 4 times the information they're giving to you. So therefore, 3/4 of your brain is capable of doing other things. And what we tend to do basically when we're listening to somebody else, we actually go off and daydream and go off and come back. It's very, very important that you give them your undivided attention. I remember once training my children in the morning, and one of my daughter, her name is Pepsi, was sitting there. And I said to her, Pepsi, where were you? She said, Daddy, right here. I said, no, Pepsi, where were you? She said, Daddy, I'm right here. I said, Pepsi, where were you? And then she understood exactly what I meant. She said, oh, I was at school, Daddy. You see, her body was right before me, but her mind was at school. She heard what I said, but she never understood what I said. So it's important that you evaluate the whole message. And finally, this is the hardest thing, I believe, on planet Earth to do. Point number 6, I believe is the hardest thing on planet Earth to do, is neutralize and control your feelings. When you're listening to someone, you must make absolutely certain that you neutralize or control your feelings. You see, if you become irate, you become angry, and you become violent in the communication, other people will shut off. They will not communicate with you any further. And even if they have to communicate with you, they will not communicate to you on a deeper level. Why? Because people will not communicate with people who behave in this particular way. Very, very important. You've got to be able to control yourself. Got to. So the 6 points are these: look interested, inquire with questions, stay on target, test your understanding, evaluate the whole message, and neutralize your feelings. Let me then move on to the second channel of communication. Excuse me. Let me move on now to the second channel of a communication, which is non-verbal communication, which is body language. I also want to share with you 6 key points in terms of body language. Point number 1 is your mouth. What position is your mouth in when you're communicating? You see, your mouth is always sending forth a message to the other person. Your mouth is always communicating. If I put my mouth in these 2 positions, or I put it in this one, 2 different messages. And so you've got to always remember that your mouth is always sending a message to the other person that you're communicating with. So you must, I would say, from time to time, just put a smile on your mouth. And you might be amazed at what that may do. So very, very important. Be aware of what your mouth is doing when you're communicating. Point number 2, your appearance. Your appearance is so powerfully impressive. You see, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. Very important. The way you dress, the way you look is so, so important. Now, I'm not telling you to put on a suit and tie and so on so that you could actually have a good appearance. No, you got to dress according to the occasion that you are encountering. But I want you to know, people judge you by your appearance. We all do it. You know, I am the author of 3 books. And you know, I spent more time in some cases and more money in some cases on the cover of the book than the content of the book. And it's just a facts of life. Why do so many men and women around the world spend so much time on their appearance to make sure they look good? Appearance is very, very important. The way you look, the way you dress, the way you wear your clothes, people judge you based upon your appearance. So it's very, very important that you learn to dress yourself appropriately. I remember going into a particular event where everyone there was in suit and tie. Everyone was in suit and tie. And Richard Branson walked in jeans. I don't believe in myself, judged him because of how he dressed, because I believe he had passed the stage of being judged by the way he dressed. Very, very important that we recognize that your appearance is powerful. You know, a lady once said to me in the workplace that every time she goes into the management meeting with her peers who are on the same level, same management level as her, they always ask her to make the tea and the coffee. So she came to me for advice, and she asked me, what should she do? I gave her two advice. The first one, I believe, was the most important. I told her, number one, be assertive. Just be assertive and say no. Just be assertive. The second point I thought was very, very important also, and I told her to change the way she appeared. In other words, dress like the rest of them. And you know, that's exactly what she did. She dressed like them, and no one asked her again to make tea and coffee. Isn't that interesting? I'm going to tell you this other story. Someone told me in a company that I went to do some training. She said to me that she was leaving the building where she worked, and as she got out of the lift, a trampish-looking man walked in with a plastic bag. And she was amazed that that man was in the lift and got past security. So she decided not to come out of the lift and to figure out where this man is going, because after all, he could be a thief. She was further amazed when he pressed the 6th floor, which is the finance department. She was even startled, so she followed him, only to learn he was the owner of the company that she was working for. Isn't that interesting? I've got to tell you one more story as it comes to me. And this is a true life story too. A gentleman was cleaning a corridor. He's a cleaner. And, you know, he's in his cleaning clothes and cleaning the corridor. And lots of people would go up and down the corridor, mostly people who are dressed in suit and tie. And he would courteously say to them, good morning, good afternoon, whenever he was cleaning. And he found out that very few people responded to what he said when he said good morning, good afternoon to them. So one day he decided to do something. And he put a suit on and walked up and down the same corridor saying good morning. And he learned an amazing thing, that the majority of people responded. And he learned that tracksuits only talk to tracksuits and suit only talk to suit. In the general, that is. So always remember, your appearance is very, very important. Point number 3, your gesture. Your gesture is to do with the movement of your hand. Always, always make sure that whatever your hands are doing, it supports what you're saying. Very important that the way you use your hand. If I was standing, I would give you some more picture, if you like, of what I mean by this. But always, always make sure that your hands support what you're saying. It's imperative, because you can actually give the wrong signal to the person that you're communicating with. Point number 4 is your posture. Your posture is to do with the way you sit or the way you stand, the whole of your body together, your posture. So when you're communicating with someone, what does your posture say to them? Does it give the impression that you don't care? Does it give the impression that you do care and that you are interested and that what they're saying to you is very important? So observe your posture in terms of what your posture did, because remember this, your body is always communicating. The next one is your voice. Your voice. Your voice is so powerful. Sometimes people speak so low you can hardly hear them, and your voice will give you away. And I often say to people that your voice is able to go to so many different pitches. You got volume, you've got rhythm, you've got speed, you've got volume, you've got all these kind of things with your voice. Use your voice to your advantage. And because people pick up messages from the tone of your voice. And, you know, I've been in training programs where a trainer would start off the day like this, and he would go like this. Well, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Errol Williams, and it's going to be an exciting day today, and I'm looking forward to it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad that you had a very good lunch, and, you know, we have a few more things to do. What would you think would happen in that course if that's the way that you communicated all the way through the one-day program? You know, people would fall asleep, they'd get bored. It's not that what you're saying is not important. In actual fact, what you're saying may be the most important thing on the planet. But you're actually putting people to sleep. You're actually causing their brain, in fact, to go into sleep mode. So you want to use your voice to the advantage of the communication process. And we need to learn various different tactics as we communicate. But always remember, your voice is also very, very important. We are getting lots of information by the way your voice sounds. We can tell whether you're confident, whether you're assertive, or whether or not you're shy. We can tell just by your voice. The final one, point number 6, in terms of nonverbal communication, is indeed your eyes. Your eyes are so important. It gives away so much information. You know, oftentimes our eyes, we're giving presentation and we are actually giving it to the ceiling or to the floor. You want to make sure when you communicate, you give the presentation to each individual person in the room. You look at every single person if you're doing a group presentation. If you're doing a presentation with just one person, then you want to actually maintain, as far as possible, eye contact with that person to let that person know that I'm interested, or you are interested in indeed what they're saying. So your eyes are very, very important. Let me go over those 6 points again. Your mouth, your appearance, your gesture, your posture, your voice, and your eyes. Very, very important. Always remember this. Your body is always, always speaking. Always. Your body never stops speaking. And that's something that we need to understand. Let me therefore move on to the final channel of communication, which is written communication. Again, I want to share with you 6 key points in terms of written communication. Now, I'm the author of 3 powerful books. I would obviously say that 3 books. This is my first book, Pursuing Excellence. It's a management book. It's used in many management courses at introductory and certificate level. Very, very important book. My second book is entitled The Temptation Trap. Again, another very, very important book. And finally, book number 3 I call Soil for a Blessing. You can actually obtain those books at errolwilliams.org. errolwilliams.org. And you can purchase those books online and we will send you the copy of those. Now, why did I talk about those 3 books? Because the principle that I'm about to share with you, I use those 6 principles in the writing of these books. I want to say this to you, that writing was one of my weakest area in management, which has now become one of my strengths. I now travel around the country helping and teaching people how to write more effectively. You can use these 6 principles, whether you're doing a text, whether you're doing an email, whether you're doing a memo, whether you're doing a letter, or whether you're doing a manuscript of any kind, report, etc. These 6 tips will work no matter what you're writing. Okay, tip number 1. Tip number 1 is aim. You must, first of all, before you start writing, before you start putting your fingers to the typewriter or whatever you do, you must first ask yourself this question: why am I writing? What is my aim? What is it that I intend to achieve? Am I trying to persuade somebody? Am I trying to inform somebody? Am I trying to explain or to entertain? Am I looking for some discussion to take place later? What is my purpose? What is it that I'm trying to achieve? Is it more economical? Is it more effective for me to just call them or to actually visit them? I must first of all address that question. What is it that I intend to achieve? What is my aim? And I would suggest in the majority of cases, especially if you're doing a manuscript like I did, is to write down what it is that you want to achieve from writing this book or this letter. What is it that you want to achieve? The goal is very important. There is a proverbial statement by a wise man called Solomon that says, where there is no vision, the people perish. And so I believe that it's imperative that we first of all ask ourselves the question, what is my aim? What do I aim to achieve by actually writing this article or this book, etc.? What is my aim? Once you have determined that it is imperative that you must write, then you can move on to step number 2. And step number 2 is the language. What language will you choose? You see, this is very, very important that in terms of your aim, you must know who you're writing to. In other words, your audience. Who are you writing to? Therefore, when you come to language, you want to speak the language of the person or persons that you are actually communicating to. So for example, if you're communicating with children, you will write according to their language. If you're communicating with, let's say, college students, it will be different. Okay, so you want to make sure you choose your language. Now, let me give you a simplified version of what I mean by language. The language should be this: short words, short sentences, and short paragraph. There's a principle that we have in management called KISS, K-I-S-S, keep it short and sweet, or keep it short and simple, or keep it short, stupid. In other words, keep it short and simple. I have learned this, that everybody is busy. You know, one day I met a tramp on the street and I was discussing with him. You see, I'd helped him out in various different ways before. And I was talking to him and I asked him a particular thing that I wanted him to do. And he told me, this tramp, when I say tramp, I mean he hasn't got no job, he's a beggar on the street. And he says to me that he was busy. I could not believe what he said. And then I decided to analyze what he said. And then I asked him another question. I said, what is the most amount of money that you have ever made in one day begging? And he said, £12. Do you know how much begging you have to do to make £12? And what he was saying to me is that he's busy at work making money in order to support himself. Now, if he is busy, then everybody on the planet is busy. So when you communicate with people, make it short, keep it short and sweet. In other words, short words, short sentences, short paragraph. If I use the word communication, is that a short word or a long word? It is a short word. Why? Because everybody understands that word, communication. So just because it's got 5 syllables, communication, doesn't mean it's a long word. That's not what I mean. I mean words that people understand first time, all the time. If I use the word lore, L-O-R-E, lore, is that a short word or a long word? Well, that's a very long word to many people, especially if they don't understand it. So the point here is this: you want to use words that people understand, that they don't need a dictionary for. You see, when I used to write at the beginning of my career in management, I used to use a thesaurus and a dictionary. And I used to, let's say I wanted to use the word wisdom, and I wanted to say, something about wisdom in a sentence, and so on. So I would get my thesaurus out, put in the word wisdom, and see what word had come up. And it would come up with the word sagacity. And I would use that word. And most people never responded to me. Why? I believe it's because they never understood me first time. I'm not talking to everybody, that is, but some people that we communicate with may not understand us if we're using impressive big words. I've got to tell you this story of a conference that I was in with around 100 people or so. And I had a friend just in front of me. And the speaker made this statement. He said, the dichotomy of the situation was very complex. And my friend in front of me turned to me and said, Errol, what is dichotomy? I said, why are you asking me? I don't have a clue. He had used such a long word that no one, well, I wouldn't say no one, that my friend and I did not understood. And you know what was amazing about it? Was that while he was still communicating, we were still talking. So we lost the gist of what he was saying. Always speak the language of the audience that you're communicating with. There's nothing wrong with using big words, but make sure you explain it. The word dichotomy is to do with complexity between two things. Di means to, chotomy, to do with complexity. Okay, so the points I'm making here is as you're communicating, you must make sure you use the language of the person that you're communicating to. I used the word lore before. The word lore really simply means traditional knowledge or wisdom. In actual fact, it's my name spelled backwards. E-R-R-O-L-L-O-R-E. That's just my own thing. So you want to make sure you use short words. Now you also want to make sure you use short sentences. If your sentences are too long, it makes it more difficult for the person that you're communicating with to understand what you're saying. In other words, make sure the length of your sentence are not more than 15 to 18 words per sentence. Because if you make your sentences far too long, it becomes far more complicated and more difficult for your audience to understand it. I remember doing an assignment. In other words, I asked the group, a certificate in management program group I was teaching, and I asked them to do the assignment, and I was giving them feedback on their assignment. And I said to one chap, one of your sentences were 43 words in length. The guy sitting next to him started to laugh. I said, don't you laugh. One of your sentences were 49 words. Now, who is going to understand 49 words in a sentence? You've got to break it up. And the shorter the sentence, the more easier it is for you to be understood. Now, if you're using short sentences and easy words to understand, can you see now how easy it would be for people to understand what you're saying? You also want to make sure that you use short paragraphs. I always make sure that my paragraphs are between 4 and 9 lines per paragraph, between 4 and 9. You see, what you want to do basically is break up the page, break up the writing, so it makes it easier for your readers. Readers love white space. Let me say it again. Readers love white space. So in terms of the language, you want to make sure it's short and sweet. Okay? Language. Okay, let me move on to point number 3. We talked about the aim. We talked about the language. The next one is to do with the layout. The layout is the first thing that your reader observes. It's the same thing as appearance when we go back to deal with the body language. The layout of the way that the information is laid out on the paper, the attractiveness of it, whether it's in color, whether it's looking really attractive, will determine whether or not people will give attention to your article. Make sure the layout is effective. Make sure the layout really looks good. Spend time on the layout. Just look back and give that look and feel a professional edge. It's always important as well that you can always give your information to somebody else to look at it so that they can give you some feedback. But always remember the layout, the way it looks on the paper is very, very, very important indeed. The layout is key because that's the first thing that they see. You never get a second chance to make a first impression. The next one is what I call one-to-one. One-to-one. Always remember your audience. Whenever you're communicating, whether in writing or whatever you're doing, you're communicating to one person. So even though you're writing a book and you're hoping to reach millions around the world in many different generations, you want to make sure you're communicating one-on-one. Make sure you know your audience. Make sure you know your audience inside out, because that way you can actually communicate far, far better. You know what their wants and their needs are. You know what they like. You know what language is communicating. So it's one-on-one. Make sure you understand your audience. Point number 5 is what I refer to as techniques. When you're writing, use different forms of techniques. What I mean by techniques, like pictures or bullet points, or bold certain important words, or underline certain words, or use pictures. But always remember, don't allow the techniques to replace your writing. It was supposed to be supporting or enhancing the points that you're making. I always use lots of different techniques to attract my audience. In actual fact, when I wrote my first book, if I just open it up to any page, I don't know what page I'm going to turn it to. Inside here, basically, I've got lots of different pictures. I've got lots of space. I've made sure that I've got numbers, bullet points, and so on. So you can see from this particular page alone, there's lots of techniques, different techniques to attract the audience, different techniques to attract the audience, indeed. Pictures all the way throughout the books. Over here, I've got a box, and it's engraved and so on. These things are very pleasant to the eye. In actual fact, one of my aim in writing the book is that my readers would find it very difficult to put it down. The testimonials that I've received from people around the world that I have caused them to be late for appointment because they couldn't put the book down is amazing, because what they don't realize and understand is that was one of my objectives, is to use a variety of different techniques to capture my audience as they read the book. Always remember that. Use different techniques, but don't allow the techniques to replace what you're doing. It's supposed to enhance what you're doing. Finally, is what we call structure. You must make sure your writing follow a logical structure. I remember a friend of mine giving another friend of mine a particular manuscript that he had written. And when my friend came back to work with the manuscript, what he had done was he had got some sellotape, and he had arrange the whole thing, put it into a logical structure for him to actually produce that document. The structure that you should use is what we call beginning, middle, and end. Beginning, middle, and end. Always remember this. Pilots often say that some of the most challenging parts of flying an aircraft is the takeoff and the landing. Always remember, the beginning and the ending is very, very important. The takeoff and the landing, as well as in the middle. And we often use a rule that we call the 10-80-10. 10% in the introduction in the beginning, 80% of the concentration in the body in the middle of the presentation, and then 10% in the conclusion. So always remember to have a structure. You should follow a logical structure to your writing, whatever it is that you're writing, whether it's a text or whether it's a memo, whatever it is you're doing, follow a particular structure, and people will take you far more seriously. I want to say thank you very, very much for tuning into this particular show. If you do need to contact me for whatever reason whatsoever, then do visit errolwilliams.org or errolwilliams.tv. I am available for many of the services that I run. I do mentoring and coaching. I do leadership management and soft skills training. I am also an internet marketing and promotion expert. So if you need any marketing done for your business or for you as an individual, if you need to find out which is the best tool out there, I could direct you to that. Or if you need someone to do the marketing for you, that's something also that we provide here at errolwilliams.org. I'm also a professional photographer. I have over 25 years experience. So if you need a photographer for your corporate functions or for weddings or funerals, whatever you need, we can provide that service with laptop and projection support at your functions. So if you need that, you can indeed contact us. Also, as I've made mention before, if you want to purchase a copy of this book, it's at errolwilliams.org, and we'll be delighted to forward a copy to you if you do make contact with us. Also, if you are interested in graphics design, I'm also a graphic designer. I'm the one who designed all my websites and everything that I send out. I design every single one of them. And one great thing about the services that I provide, whether it's be training anywhere in the world, is that I provide a 100% money-back guarantee. What that means simply is, if you're not happy after the work is done and you're not satisfied, I will not submit an invoice. I will indeed not submit an invoice. If you're looking for the best way, and you know, in terms of website development, and you would like to know which is the best way to go about that, then indeed I'll be delighted to show you the tools that I use and direct you along those lines. And finally, if you want to work with me from home, I do most of my work now from home, from the comfort of my home. And working with people around the world, in fact, in helping people to be successful working from home, is what we call that Plan B, is what we call multiple residual streams of income, multi-level marketing. So if you'd like to work with me, give me a call. Again, I say visit me at errolwilliams.org or visit me at errolwilliams.tv. I look forward to hearing from you. Again, I say thank you so very much for tuning in to this show, Pursuing Excellence in Communication. I wish you all the best in your communication, that you become an ace communicator, accurate, clear, and effective. Take care of yourself and your family. Bye-bye.